Samsung Galaxy win the fastest game of Worlds 2016. They've got to kill it to one. Show who's down! Show who's down! Royal, they're running! They're dead! They're taken out! This might be the last fight. Frost is down. RNG looking for more. That's a triple kill. Bjergsen's running out. And Team Solo Mid, their hopes, their dreams, they're done. Royal and VODS to Chicago.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Worlds Tonight. I'm EpicSkillshot supporter here with Joshua Jatt Leesman and David Phreak Turley, and we just closed the book on Group D here at the 2016 Worlds Group Stage, and unfortunately also as, on TSM rather, which has kind of created a lot of silence in the arena, notably so.
Yeah, definitely deflating for the crowd that was here, but the nice part is we can talk as much crap on TSM as we want because the true TSM fans probably turned off their stream in frustration when they lost that game to RNG.
Yeah, well, we will see. The day in any case started with TSM Royal Never Give Up and Samsung Galaxy tied at 2-1, while Splyce was still looking for their first win, and they did eventually get on the board, but that is all they have to show from their Worlds run. But it was a nice victory at that. Samsung Galaxy, however, had a perfect day, starting with their win over North America's TSM, and they never stopped going today.
Yeah, Samsung Galaxy looked really amazing. They lost one game the entire group stage. That was last week to TSM, but this one started beautifully, killing off Svenskeren like this one.
Yeah, and this was probably the closest game we had all day, right at the very start. Crown had a critical outplay on Bjergsen there, dodging the double bomb. Bjergsen was getting too aggressive, not respecting him, and then it stretched and stretched and stretched, and it ended up getting pretty close, but it was Samsung time and time again coming out superior in these fights.
Yeah, even that Baron steal was a quarter of a second away from Sven himself being in range of the steal, but didn't happen. And then finally, this Baron attempt, we kept waiting for Hanzo to actually go for the flank on Kennen, but he was waiting for his ultimate to come off cooldown, which just meant it took too long, and Samsung got the steal, got the team fight.
Yeah, Samsung got a ton of momentum off that, but as said, Splyce also got on the board because they faced off against RNG, and they earned the win. They dialed up the pressure on the entire group, and especially on RNG.
Yeah, honestly, there was a huge amount of excellent gameplay from Wonder. He dodged a lot of games, and we did see him die recently, but these top lane dives, because he was already winning his lane, started working out, and you just had Splyce playing as the better team.
And I'm really happy that Splyce won this game in this fashion. They really showed their strengths as a team, and this is kind of what they wanted to come to Worlds for. They weren't expecting to get out of groups, but they wanted to have a good showing, and this was a good showing.
They did in this game indeed, but for RNG, things only got worse as they went up against Samsung Galaxy, who put their foot down and secured a spot in the quarterfinals. They had to win this one to do that. And what was it? What turned around here for Samsung today?
This was Samsung playing as securely as they did against Royal last week. Like, most of Samsung's games actually ultimately looked this good. They are a strong team, but most importantly here in the group stages, they actually had good early games, finally had great games for Ambition and winning lanes.
Yeah, Samsung and H2K, the two most dominant days we've seen so far at Worlds. And the thing that was so good about this day for me for Samsung is not only did they have their pocket picks, or their comfort picks like Crown's Victor, they also brought out the new stuff like this Zyra that just seemed to catch Uzi and Mata completely off guard.
Yeah, definitely, and they secured #1 in the group. With that, then that means that it all came down to the final match of the day between Royal Never Give Up and North America's TSM to decide that last spot in the quarterfinals.
And if there's one thing you would never want to do is to give Uzi a triple kill at 7 minutes. When that happened, you knew TSM was in for a rough one.
And even still, Bjergsen himself had some very good plays. You're seeing aftermath of a couple fights here where Bjergsen puts down what damage he can. Many of these fights became very close. You're seeing the overload chain going through there. He gets eventual a couple of kills. But the problem is Uzi just could not be stopped. His damage numbers were off the charts. Couldn't be killed. Double life steal. Trinity Force Ezreal killed a lot of people.
And even with that, it's not like this game didn't deliver drama. There's a 14 kill advantage here for RNG when they're in the base. And TSM end up acing them because Bjergsen gets a flank. So at multiple points, you thought maybe TSM would be able to turn it around. But Uzi and the rest of RNG were too strong.
Yeah, and unfortunately for TSM, it doesn't work out. They also gave Aurelion Sol over. Of course, that Poppy was strong, and RNG was too strong. And with that, the end of Group D, let's take a look at how it all ends up. Samsung Galaxy gets the first seed. Royal Never Give Up rather gets the second seed. And unfortunately, TSM and Splyce are out, and they're staying in San Francisco or rather going home.
And just to quickly clarify, though, TSM and Royal are both 3-3. Royal 2-0'd TSM over the group stage. They own the head-to-head. No tiebreaker to play. 2-0 means they advance.
Yes, unfortunately for the TSM fans. Well, we'll fill the last two spots in the quarterfinals tomorrow when Group C plays their last 6 games. The action starts with the LPL's IMA versus the LMS's Flash Wolves, followed by C9 versus the reigning world champions SK Telecom T1. Is that the trauma from last year? Is it
C9?
coming up? Did I say
Listen,
that? Oh.
listen. Last year, NA went 0-10 in week 2. this year we already have 2 wins. It's an improvement, progress. That's all we're looking for.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens with C9 tomorrow. Immediately following tomorrow's games, the knockout stage bracket will be drawn live on stage here at the Bill Graham Civic Auditorium. And now we are going to take a closer look at our newest quarterfinalists and tomorrow's matchups in just a moment. So if you're watching in client, check out youtube.com/allesports for the full version of Worlds Tonight. Well, that gives us a little bit more time to talk about today, which started off being incredibly crazy. I think that Samsung just coming out of the gate swinging was a surprise at that, and then continuing it with a 3-0. Not a lot of people had them as #1 in the seed in their pick'ems.
Yeah, very few. Some did. People who were watching Korea very closely, or a bit of Korean homers, maybe had them as the #1 here. Some had them getting out of the groups. But I want to touch on what LS said earlier on in the broadcast. He said, we're not even seeing the Samsung that we were seeing in Korea. They're winning early game, they're winning lanes, they're winning mid game. Normally, they're waiting for late, and that's where the true strengths are. So they're winning without using what their traditional strengths were, which was these 45-minute team fights. They're starting, well, sure. So they're starting Victor, the champions are there, but the way in which they are winning is atypical for them. They look better than they have all year, and this is now a very scary Samsung.
Exactly, they won fast, and it is a little bit of a peculiar group stage for them when you look at it in the big picture. They're 5-1. With their one loss being one of the most devastating losses we saw at Worlds. But that's in the past. They're looking forward, and today was completely dominant. They're kind of crushing any naysayers who were saying they were the weak team coming at Korea, or that they shouldn't be respected like other Korean teams. They should be. They're the best team in that group by far. Yeah,
and we have to mention 3 games of Core JJ as well.
Right, and I think that should stay. We kind of saw coming in that their performance tended to be better with him. They won the games compared to the ones that they would lose. And if I kind of do some conjecture here, they look the best of the teams we have seen so far in groups, with, weirdly enough, the exception of maybe H2K, who looks so dominant themselves. So,
weirdly enough, give them some praise.
Super dark horses, H2K and Samsung, are the most convincing teams out of groups to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's because we're just thinking of who went undefeated most recently. And both of those teams won every single game they had, whereas ROX dropped a game to Albus Nox Luna. That's not super convincing as far as them being a powerhouse.
No, and if you think of most convincing teams coming out of the group stage that secured their spot, RNG still look wobbly, very up and down. Uzi said it themselves in the interview. They still have some issues to fix.
And this is the problem, is they have these games where they lose to Splyce, these games where they smash TSM. You're seeing the Splyce one here where Uzi could not dodge a skill shot to save his life. He got hit by several deadly flourishes with Flash still up, and yet you've got things like this where Uzi does 40,000 damage in a 37-minute game, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, Uzi and Matcha still seem to be the only way these guys win games. When they're not getting triple kills at 7 minutes, they weren't doing very well today. They lost pretty handily to Splyce, and they got dominated by Samsung. So, I mean, coming into that TSM game, if you were just looking at the 2 games they played prior, you thought TSM was going to be able to win. RNG definitely deserved that win. They're moving on because they beat TSM twice, but they look shaky in all other matchups.
And a bit of a shout out to Xiaohu as well, who brought out the Aurelion Soul. Looked like he knew the champion very well, which is good because the MSI, he said he never played the champion before. So in that sort of 5-month span, he got what looks like pretty good at it. And that's good if Xiaohu can get some champions that make him look a bit better. He looked great at MSI, hasn't looked good in the summer split. Maybe he gets some of these good performances again.
We'll see what RNG can do in the quarterfinal, but we have to spend some time on TSM. Of course, fantastic high hopes on their shoulders, and rightfully so, coming off a fantastic season in North America. What was it in the end that didn't come together for them, Jatt?
Should we make excuses or should we be real? The thing is, they had the best season they ever had from a regular season perspective, but they had a really bad Worlds. And individual performances from game to game were wildly inconsistent. One game, Bjergsen was the one with 5 kills. Everyone else was a bunch of deaths.
Feeding.
Doublelift had 7 or 8 kills early game on Lucian. The other 2 solo lanes were feeding. They were never able to actually find a cohesive game on a consistent basis. They had a couple of great games. You saw their peak, that one game against Samsung, but you saw a lot of valleys. And it's weird for a team that looked so consistent in North America to come in here and be so inconsistent on an individual basis. One bad game, next game they were great. And to me, that speaks to them kind of buckling under the pressure. Biofrost was a rookie. People were saying he wasn't playing like a rookie the entire year. He played like a rookie here. Haunter had never been to Worlds before. He played like he'd never been to Worlds before. And there was just inconsistent play all across the board for TSM.
And I think some of the weaknesses TSM could have been exposed if I think we had better teams domestically. Realistically, the teams that showed up to Worlds here from North America, like CLG was the 3rd spot with that, and they looked weak the whole time through. I think NA had a pretty bad bottom 5, bottom 6 this year, and TSM got very few real tests.
And I also think it's a little bit tragic because the way these groups have been playing out, COG had one game where if they win, they make it out of group stage. TSM had one game at the very end where if they win, they make it out of group stage. And C9 is going to be the final test tomorrow.
G2 had what?
Hopefully NA can get a team out of groups. I really feel like they did improve from last year. It just doesn't seem like they've improved enough.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Well, against all odds, maybe that happens tomorrow. In about 24 hours, we'll know the last 2 quarterfinal contenders to do battle in Chicago. SK Telecom, Cloud9, IMA, and the Flash Wolves. So who's making it out of the groups? I heard the Fish Show say at the end of the show, well, I think it might be SKT and Flash Wolves with the best cards. Phreak?
I'm going to say SKT C9. I know NA keeps disappointing in week 2 here at Worlds, but I really do believe in Cloud9 playing correctly, making the right choices. I think SKT is above them. I think significantly so, but C9 is number 2 for me.
Yeah, and you have to kind of ask yourself, are you punishing C9 because TSM and COG did poorly? Because you shouldn't. They're in the same region. You have to judge within the group because this is clearly a different meta and a different game teams are playing. G2, the #1 team that everyone in Europe was looking up to, went 1-5, and then H2K went undefeated their time. So I'm not going to punish C9 because TSM failed today, which means I still think they can get out of the group with SKT at #1 and C9 at #2.
Yeah, I have to agree. We'll see what happens. We need to sign off for the evening, but we'll be back here tomorrow for the final day of the 2016 Worlds Group Stage. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Worlds Tonight. See ya.
Samsung Galaxy win the fastest game of Worlds 2016. They've got to kill it tomorrow. Xiaohu's down. Xiaohu's down. Royal, they're running. They're dead. They're taken out. This might be the last fight. Firefrost is down. RNG looking for more. That's a triple kill. Bjergsen's running out. And Team Solo Mid, their hopes, their dreams, they're done. Royal and VODS to Chicago.